What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY and the overall markets. We'll talk about what news came out for Tesla that's very important. What's happening for next week is we're going to be looking for some high volatility. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY in uninvested cash. The offer ends very soon, in just about 4 days from now. Anyways, let's talk about what's happening with the market. So, as far as Tesla's moving, okay, we had this high up here that was made around this 490 area. Since then, we came down, made a lower high, and now Tesla's showing some signs that it might be looking for a decline. However, we haven't really lost this like 415 support yet to turn a lot more bearish. So Tesla's still technically holding around the 432 area. So the question remains, what's going to happen from this point on? This is going to be very dependent on different factors. So I want to talk about what those factors are first. Then I'll break down more details about the charts. So as far as Tesla's moving, we're seeing some interesting price action right now. Tesla has been seeing more declines, at least, especially with the fact that its beta is above that of the NASDAQ. So Tesla saw a bigger move to the downside alongside the broader markets. So it wasn't just Tesla in the red, it was the whole market that came down. So if you look like right over here, we saw Nvda in the red, so was Apple, Microsoft, Google, and the list goes on. The whole market came down, and that's what dragged Tesla lower. On top of this, there's been more talk about how at the end of the year, with yields starting to go up because of uncertainty approaching the end of the year, that could be part of why we saw yields going up and the market slowing down because of that. And then there could also be some tax harvesting happening as well. So a lot of different factors played in why we got this sell-off. But the main thing for Tesla is the fact that, at least from a technical basis, we pumped so much already. So seeing a bit of a pullback is nothing out of the ordinary. We got the Chinese registrations data. Everything was quite decent. If anything, the second straight week showed that their numbers were at about 17,600 for the week of December 16th through the 22nd. That's down about 5% from the previous week, but still not the worst. And then don't forget that going into next week on January 2nd, Tesla should be announcing their deliveries. That's going to be huge for the share price. Can't wait to see what that leads to. Now, just to be very clear, Baird is still giving Tesla an outperform rating. Other analysts out there are still saying the same things. The price-risk ratio is dipping a bit. Tesla's losing a little bit of strength. Mondays tend to be green about 53% of the time, but besides that, the market's in a very interesting place. And then as far as Tesla's volume goes, we did see a little bit less volume, only about 81 million, so not too bad. As far as the market goes going into next week, we have PMI data on Monday, which is quite minor. For Tuesday, we have very minor data because it's going to be New Year's Eve, so there's nothing else that's going to be coming out for a while. Wednesday is going to be January 1st, so no data comes out. It's going to be the new year. And then Thursday will be the start of 2025. Very minor data once again. We just have like a jobless claims and more PMI reports from manufacturing. And Friday, we have more ISM manufacturing numbers, which are going to be more important. So most of the data is minor until Friday when we have more manufacturing numbers. We'll be watching to see what that leads to. Once again, the market was in the red. We saw Nvidia sell off. The market did try to bounce towards the very end of the day, so I do think that there will be an attempt to rebound going into early Monday, but there's no guarantee the move is going to last because of the fact that the overall trend could be shifting. Right now, when you look at our earnings, we could see that there's nothing significant coming out for next week. And as the market is still in fear mode, we're still seeing fear perpetuate. Now momentum is back to fear. It was trying to bounce to neutral, but now it's starting to fail. We started to see a lot of puts being closed. So as puts being closed, the market came back down. So we'll see if shorts start to pile in again if the market gets a big rejection. The VIX is trying to bounce at neutral right now, so we'll see if that continues or not. So what do I think is going to happen for next week? What is my view of Tesla? I just want to say that we had a high up here. We came down, made a lower high. So the trend could be shifting in the downwards pressure. If we lose 415, we're going to be expecting Tesla to dump a lot more. And if we break past 445, we could be looking for a push. I think going into next week, okay, Tesla's going to be pushing into like this higher 430 area, just under 440. I think there's going to be an attempt to rebound close to our 20 EMA. But if we continue to make lower highs, this is going to be at risk of a lot more downsides. You want to just keep that in mind. I do expect this to push a little bit early into the week to retest our 20 EMA, which will be very close to 440 by Monday. But then if Tesla does not break past the high of above like 445 or so, we could just be making a lower high and continue to slow down with the whole market. It seems to me like Tesla's moving with the market this time around, right? The market's is like moving in unison. You guys can see how the market's moving together. So there's a good chance Tesla's going to follow that trend. So I think that with deliveries coming out, this will attempt to push a bit. Then it could slow down later on. And if we end up failing to hold this low from today, there's going to be a risk of us dipping all the way lower towards the like 415 area or so. Now, whether we got a big rug pull or if we get a big bounce after that, so if we get some kind of like bounce and a dip, we could still get a massive bounce back up to these highs if we get a decent deliveries reports, and as long as Tesla remains optimistic and it impresses its investors. If we get a dump, if it pushes a bit then rejects and we just start to crash and we lose 415, there's going to be a risk of us dumping into the 300s. So please keep that in mind. When you look at the daily chart on Tesla, you'll see that we are rejecting here. We still have this like big gap over here to fill around 400. We also have the support at 414. This is close to our 20 EMA. So if we lose that support at 414 after deliveries, we're looking for that gap fill here. There's also a lot of gaps below, so we could be looking for quite a bit of downside. But that would be another buying opportunity, so I'm not really too concerned about it. I do anticipate there's going to be a bit of a rebound early next week, but then there could be a rejection later on. And then whether we get a bigger dump or not depends on what we get from our data. For other factors, I want to say that SPY, at least on the daily time frame, it has a left shoulder here, it has a head and a right shoulder. If we lose 591, we're looking for a dump back down towards 585. If we break past 597, we're looking for a push to get back up to this gap fill close to about 599. I think next week we're going to look for an attempt to hold 595. If we hold above it, we're going to go for a little bit of a push back up to 597 to retest our 20 EMA. But because of this head and shoulders, if we can't surpass this high right here around 600, we might just come short, make a lower high, and then just continue to dump back down to 591. I find that to be a little bit more probable looking at the fact that the head and shoulders is very prevalent and how we're turning on the 4-hour, which makes me suspect that there could be more downside. The 4-hour is looking weaker, so what could be happening is we push to make a lower high, then we start dumping right back down to our 200 EMA or below. So that makes me concerned, and there is that risk of downside. Another reason why I say that is looking at ES, it does not look like it's reversing. It looks like it's just getting a small rebound attempt. So it might make an attempt to get back up to 60-60, so it might push SPY a little bit higher, but then it could reject and start turning later on as time goes on, right, to end up losing 6,000. Bitcoin looks a little bit weaker, might see a rebound for 95,000 or maybe a little bit below, only to start dumping back down towards these lows, taking us down to the 92,000s. So please keep that in mind. For NVIDIA, we have a very similar setup. Now, NVIDIA likes to form these peaks over and over and over again. In this case, it could be, there's a peak that's forming here, so it could be like making a lower high again before it starts to turn back down. Look for a push, look for a push on Monday, back up towards 138. And if we reject there, I'm looking for a move right back down. Ultimately, I could be looking for a retest of previous resistance becoming support around 133 on NVIDIA. Might start off with a push only to reject as we're forming like a head and shoulders here. And I see some weaknesses developing on this chart. So a rebound towards the 138 area, then a rejection is very probable, and we could be making our way a lot lower as time goes on. For NQ, it's looking weaker now. It's going to try to rebound. I'm going to be looking for a test of 21,800 near our 50 EMA. I expect it to retest this resistance, but then there's no guarantee it's going to hold because my concern is the fact that we had a high here. We came down, made a lower high. Are we about to come down and make a lower high? If we surpass this high, we could be bullish. If we make a lower high, then yes, we could be looking for that dump back down. I still see a risk of that. So please be very, very careful and very mindful of that. For the QQQ, we have like a double top leg structure. We could be looking for an attempt to get back up to 524. If we hit this, we could reject and start tipping back down to 520 or below. So look for a push and rejection as the most likely possibility. For Apple has this resistance around 255. If we can't hold above that, there's going to be a risk of us coming back down towards 253. So if 253 fails us, we're looking for 251.8 as our next support. Looking at this rejection here, there's going to be a very, very interesting trend that's developing. So I think Apple looks bearish with this bearish engulfing candlestick. We could rebound a bit, then make a move back down. But ultimately, I see that downside risk. I also want to say that the daily is starting to look weaker. If you look at the daily, we have this potential cross in the PPO that's coming. Might rebound a little bit before it continues to dip, but I do see a risk of coming back down to 252. For a few more, I'm not going to go over everything in today's video. I just want to go over a couple of them. Palantir looks a little bit weaker. I do want to mention that it did attempt to rebound a little bit, so it could be looking for a retest of 79.8 to 80, and then it could reject off this and start dipping back down to 76.95. So look for a rebound towards the 80s before it starts to dip, and that's going to be the most likely possibility. For the Russell, we're range bound here. We could be looking for an attempt to hit 223.6. If we hit this, we could reject and start dipping back down to 220. So please be very careful, especially as you have this imbalance down here to fill. So a rebound and a rejection seems very, very probable. For Coinbase, we look like we're a little bit more bearish. We want to reclaim 275. Otherwise, this is going to be favoring downside. I think that this will see a small rebound attempt for this previous support becoming resistance near 270, but then we could continue to dip back down to this imbalance towards 257. Amazon's going to try to rebound towards these EMAs around 225 to 226. I do expect that to happen, but there's no guarantee it's going to be pushing too much higher because I also see a very similar pattern where it's becoming a lot more distributive. This resembles a reversal structure, which could lead to a lower high. We need to break 230 to turn bullish. Otherwise, we could be making a lower high then coming back down. So please be very careful going into next week. Right now, we're range bound on Meta. We have support at 588 and resistance at 604. I do expect this to go back and forth, but looking at this is resembling a cup, an inverse cup and handle. So like an inverse cup and handle, which could lead to like some downside and move back down to 588 or below. For Microsoft, we also have a distributive looking structure with the head and shoulders. We need to try to hold above 431. I do think we might attempt to retest it, but notice how it's barely holding on right here. Might push a bit and then make a move back down lower. So look for an attempt in the low 430s, like 431 to 433. Before this continues to dip lower, it still looks bearish to me. Google is trying to rebound as well, but my concern is the fact that there's a left shoulder here ahead and a right shoulder. Might push a little bit higher. We could be looking at our key fib levels like the 0.618 retracement area near 195 before it rejects back down to 192. And if that fails us, we're looking for a bigger dump. The VIX is looking weaker. We do have this gap to fill, so I do think the VIX might come down to fill this gap because the market may push a little bit higher, but then the VIX could try to bounce again and start to continue its run. The VIX does not look like it's done yet. It looks like it's just getting started, which makes us suspect the market has more downside potential. So the market may rebound a bit on Monday, but then it could be followed by more downside later on. Tesla may also do the same thing. It's possible we rebound a bit on Monday, but then there could be a rejection. But whether or not we get a big move is going to depend a lot more on what happens on Thursday when they have their deliveries. Remember, the market's going to be trading on Monday and Tuesday. Then Wednesday, the market's going to be closed for New Year's. And then for Thursday, the market's going to be coming back because of the day after. And then Tesla has its deliveries on Thursday. So that's going to be the much bigger factor. So Tesla only has a couple of days of trading. Then we have deliveries. That's going to be the next major factor for them. With that being said, I want to thank you all so much for listening. Get ready for some big moves going into next week. I'll be back with another update for tomorrow. Thank you for listening and peace out.